Welcome to SoulPrisma. It's great to have you back. In this video, we will introduce the birth chart houses. First, I want to explain which house systems exist. Perhaps you remember this line in the birth chart, which is the line that goes from the ascendant to the descendant. The ascendant is the zodiac sign that was rising in the east at the time of birth, and the descendant is the sign that was setting in the west. This line represents the horizon, and all planets that are above this line in the birth chart were theoretically visible in the sky at the time of birth, while all planets below this line were not visible. Now, there's another line added, which goes from the Imum Coeli, or IC, to the Medium Coeli, or MC. The line from the ascendant to the descendant and the line from the IC to the MC are called the two main axes in the birth chart. They are important because they indicate very sensitive points in the birth chart. For the calculation of the houses, the ascendant always represents the beginning of the first house. The IC always represents the beginning of the fourth house. The descendant always indicates the beginning of the seventh house. And the MC always indicates the beginning of the 10th house. This already defines 4 houses in the birth chart, and there are various calculation methods called house systems for the other 8 houses in astrology. The most commonly used house system in astrology is called Placidus, which was created by the Italian clergyman Placidus de Titus in the 17th century. Almost every birth chart you encounter will have the houses calculated using his method. I will explain more about the method of calculation later, as it is relatively complicated, and since you can easily create a birth chart with a computer today, you don't necessarily need to know it. For now, it is enough to have heard of the name Placidus. By the way, the houses in the birth chart you see here were calculated using Placidus. Now, let's look at another, less popular house system called Koch. Pay attention to the houses for a moment, because they will shift soon. This is the same birth chart calculated using the Koch method. And as you can see, the difference in the houses is really minimal. The two main axes from the ascendant to the descendant and from the AC to the MC are always identical in both Placidus and Koch. But due to the slight shift in the other houses, it can happen that in Placidus, for example, a personal planet is in the first house, while in the Koch method, it would be in the second house. Both the Placidus method and the Koch method have in common that the houses in the birth chart are of unequal size. As you can see in this birth chart, the first house, for example, is much larger than the 10th house. In comparison, there are also house systems in which all houses are calculated to be the same size. These systems are called equal house systems. Let's take a look at it. This is a birth chart where all houses are the same size, which means that each house covers exactly 30 degrees. If one calculates, that birth chart will either be drawn on the ascendant which means the ascendant-descendant line is marked, and the birth chart circle is then divided into 12 equal parts. Alternatively, the ascendant is set at 0 degrees Aries, as seen here. This is particularly done when one does not know the birth time and therefore cannot calculate the ascendant. In this case, the houses are also of equal size and always encompass exactly one zodiac sign. As the yellow arrows indicate, this is also called the whole sign house system. Yes, these were the 4 most common house systems in astrology. There are a few more, but they are rarely used. For now, it is enough for you to know that there are different methods of calculating houses, and that the most commonly used one is called Placidus. Next, we will explore why birth chart houses rotate. Here you can see the Earth positioned in the zodiac, and within 24 hours, it rotates once around itself, and therefore once through the entire zodiac. In the birth chart, the rotation of the Earth is represented in this way. To do this, we will just draw the ascendant for now. Perhaps you've already noticed all those fine lines inside the birth chart. Those are the degrees that run once around the zodiac. They help to determine a specific position in the birth chart. Each zodiac sign consists of 30 degrees, and in this birth chart, the ascendant is at 0 degrees in the sign of Pisces. We can see this in the symbol for Pisces. Unlike reading a clock where you count the minutes at each line, in the birth chart we count the degrees counterclockwise. Let me show you to illustrate this. 1 degree is here. 2 degrees in Pisces is here. Now we have 3 degrees. 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 degrees. Let's stop here for a moment. When George Clooney was born on May the 6th, 1961, it was 2:58 in the morning, and the ascendant was exactly at 11 degrees in Pisces, just like in this birth chart. 1 hour after his birth, the world had of course moved on, and let's see how the ascendant would have shifted in the birth chart. At 3:58, it would be at 6 degrees in the sign of Aries. This means that in 1 hour, the ascendant moved from 11 degrees in Pisces to 6 degrees in Aries, due to the rotation of the Earth, as indicated by the small blue arrow showing where the ascendant was before, and how far it shifted in 1 hour. 1 hour later, it would have appeared that the ascendant was at 0 degrees Taurus, exactly at 4:58. Let's make a bigger leap of 10 hours, which is exactly 12 hours after George Clooney's birth. At that point, the ascendant would be at 21 degrees in Virgo at 2:58 p.m. The small blue arrow indicates that the Earth has already rotated halfway through the entire zodiac in those 12 hours, and even a few degrees more. Exactly 24 hours later, on the next day, the ascendant would be then at 13 degrees in Pisces. We started at 11 degrees, and you can see that it's almost exactly where it was the day before, with just a small shift of 2 degrees. This shift is due to the fact that the Earth not only rotates on its own axis, but also moves in the direction of the zodiac as it revolves around the Sun. So one can say that the ascendant and the houses move through the entire zodiac in 24 hours and shift forward approximately 1 degree every 4 minutes. This can be slightly different because the ascendant moves sometimes a little faster and sometimes slower. This is mainly due to the fact that the Earth is slightly tilted on its axis. But it moves through the entire zodiac in 24 hours, just like all the other houses in the birth chart. Now let's move on to the question of how to interpret the birth chart houses. 2 factors play a special role in the interpretation of a house. These are primarily the planets. Here they are now marked and can be interpreted in relation to the houses, as I have shown in the video about the planets. Let's make an example for that. Here again, looking at George Clooney's birth chart and taking a closer look at his second house. The Sun is located in his second house, which could be interpreted as him wanting to realize himself in the themes of the second house. As a reminder, the second house is all about what you have, including talents, money, or other values. Also located in the second house is his Mercury, the planet of thinking and communication. One can imagine that he likes to think or talk about the themes of the second house, such as talents, values, and money. Both planets, the Sun and Mercury, are also located in the sign Taurus, which suggests that both his thinking and self-realization are very down to earth when it comes to his values, money, and talents. So, interpreting the planets in a house and taking into account the zodiac sign in which they are located is one factor for interpreting a birth chart house. And this can now be done for all other houses in this birth chart in which at least one planet is located. However, if you take a closer look at this birth chart, you will probably notice that some houses do not have any planets, such as the 3rd, 4th, 7th, 9th, 10th and 12th house. There is another factor by which a house can be interpreted, and that is the zodiac sign at the cusp of the house. But first let me show you which line represents the cusp of each house. The ascendant, now marked in red, is always the cusp of the first house. This would now be the cusp of the second house. This line represents the cusp of the third house, and this line represents the fourth house. So to interpret a birth chart, it is important in which zodiac sign the cusp of the house falls. This can give us a lot of information about how a person is likely to live the theme of the house. Let us also take a look at the first 4 houses. The first house, which is the ascendant, falls here in the sign of Pisces. We already talked about the ascendant. The second house cusp, which is this line here, falls into the sign of Aries in George Clooney's birth chart. The third house cusp, this line, falls into the sign of Taurus. in the 4th house cusp falls into the sign of Gemini. I will show you in another video how you can interpret a birth chart house using this information. For now, let me demonstrate it again with the 2nd house in George Clooney's chart. As we saw earlier, the 2nd house cusp in his birth chart falls into the sign of Aries. And maybe you remember that being motivated is one of the characteristics of Aries. Therefore, one could interpret that he is particularly motivated to implement these themes of the 2nd house, such as expressing his talents, creating values, and earning money. The Sun and Mercury in the 2nd house reinforce this interpretation. And since they are in Taurus, it means that he will also be very down to earth. I hope this has given you a good introduction into the creation and interpretation of the houses, and that you enjoyed this SoulPrisma intuitive learning video. Bye for now.